Imagine a $3.7 trillion empire that started with two guys, a garage, and just $1,300 in cash. To fund their dream, Steve Wozniak sold his calculator and Steve Jobs sold his van. Today, the iPhone alone earns more than McDonald's, Nike, and Netflix combined. This is the story of every crash, every comeback, and the ultimate rise of Apple. 1976, born in a garage. In a small California garage, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak hand-built the Apple I. It was just a circuit board with no screen or keyboard, sold for $666 each. They started with just $1,300, but their vision would eventually change the world. 1980, the massive IPO. Just 4 years after starting, Apple goes public on the stock market. It was the biggest IPO in decades, creating over 300 instant millionaires. Steve Jobs, at just 25, was now worth over $200 million.
1984, the Macintosh launch. Jobs introduces the Macintosh, the first computer for the rest of us. It brought mice and icons to the mainstream, forever changing how we use technology. The launch featured a legendary Super Bowl ad that redefined marketing history. 1985, Steve Jobs is fired. After a bitter internal power struggle, Apple fires its own co-founder. Steve Jobs walks out of the company he built at age 30, humiliated and finished. Without its visionary leader, Apple begins a slow and painful decline. 1993, near bankruptcy. By the early 90s, Apple is bleeding cash and losing to Microsoft's Windows. Critics claim the company has less than 18 months before it goes bankrupt. The pride of Silicon Valley was now being written off as dead. 1997, the return of the king. Apple hits rock bottom and, in a desperate move, buys Next and brings Jobs back. In an ironic twist, their biggest rival, Microsoft, invests $150 million to keep them alive. Jobs tells the crowd, if we want to move forward, we have to let go of a few things.
1998, the iMac saves the day. Jobs cuts 350 products down to just 4 and reveals the colorful, translucent iMac. The world hears 2 words for the first time: think different. The iMac sells 800,000 units in months, bringing Apple back to profit. 2001, 1,000 songs in your pocket. Steve Jobs reaches into his pocket and pulls out a tiny white device, the iPod. Apple reinvents the entire music industry by allowing you to carry your whole library anywhere. They were no longer just a computer company, they were a global lifestyle brand. 2007, reinventing the phone. The iPhone is revealed, an iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator in one. It had no stylus and no keyboard, just a revolutionary multi-touch screen. Apple's value explodes from $7 billion to $120 billion almost overnight. 2010, the iPad and beating Microsoft. Apple launches the iPad, creating a tablet category that critics said wouldn't work. This is the year Apple officially surpasses Microsoft in market value for the first time. From a near death in 1997 to beating their biggest rival in just 13 years. 2011, the passing of a visionary. The world mourns as Steve Jobs passes away at the age of 56. Tim Cook takes over as CEO, facing massive pressure to prove Apple can innovate without Jobs. Though the stock dips, Jobs had built an ecosystem stronger than any one person. 2015, the Apple Watch record. Tim Cook proves the critics wrong with the launch of the Apple Watch. Apple becomes the first American company to hit a $700 billion market cap. The ecosystem continues to grow as services begin to drive massive new revenue. 2018, the first trillion-dollar company. Apple makes history by becoming the first U.S. company to reach $1 trillion in value. It was a milestone that seemed impossible during the bankrupt days of 1997. The garage-born startup was now the most valuable entity on the planet. 2020, $2 trillion
trillion in a pandemic. While the world shuts down, Apple hits a $2 trillion valuation. They announced the M1 chip, ditching Intel to build their own powerful processors. Working from home made Apple's devices more essential than ever before. 2024, the $3.7 trillion peak. Apple launches Apple Intelligence and the Vision Pro, betting on AI and spatial computing. The company is now worth a staggering $3.7 trillion, more than the GDP of entire nations. From $1,300 to $3.7 trillion, Apple's journey is the greatest comeback in business history.